I think I can do it, Scott.
Yeah.
Scott, you better.
You can do it from there.
Sorry, just mute. Just hit the little speaker button. Speak.
No. That one. Okay, no. There we go. Sorry about that.
Now we'll call this meeting to order. Thank you. This is the Finance Subcommittee for the Holyoke City Council. July 26th meeting. We'll be reporting out to the full City Council next week in our Summer Midnight Madness meeting known for August 1st. We are on Zoom. We're being recorded on Zoom. We're being streamed. We are live. We have 4 members present, 1 member about to be here, so our votes will all be in the chambers. We have a number of guests and currently no other city councilors, but I will introduce the committee to my far right, Councilor Juan Anderson Burgos. Next is Councilor Peter Tallman, and Will Powell to my left. Kevin Jordan will be here any minute. With that in mind, I think we can proceed with item number 1.
Motion to take item number 1 off the table for discussion.
Motion made second, we take item number 1 off the table for discussion, introduced by Councilor McGee. In order that the Finance Committee discuss the funding of interpretation of subcommittee meetings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Welcome. We have members of Holyoke Media, I presume, here to discuss this. Please, if you feel more comfortable, it might be easier if you come in with the mics so you don't have to stand. Plenty of room. Scott, I know your title is, I'm going to say Executive Director, but is that correct?
Correct.
And Chairman of the Board?
Yes, President of the Board of Directors,
President
Justin
of the Board.
Miskowski.
Thank you. I know Councilor McGee has talked to all of us a little bit here and there. I know we're all very interested, but it's always been a funding issue. So,
Sure.
Scott, if you want to fill us in where we might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So the discussion is around funding this from a portion of the cable revenues, which are controlled by the mayor. Currently that's what's been funding the interpretation of the full council meetings. And I ran some rough numbers just to give you an idea of the money that's coming in and, again, ballpark idea of what the costs associated with it would be. I will own I ran these in late April, but it's a year-to-date thing, so it should still give a reasonable reference. So the quick calculation I did was that generously figured there was 281 hours of city council and subcommittee meetings last year. The cost to interpret that based on the current rate that we're paying is about $42,000. And then quarterly going into that account for municipal projects is controlled by the mayor. We put in approximately $12,000 a quarter. And over the past 4 quarters, there's about $50,000 that went in. What should be noted on that is the cable revenues are a fluid thing, so that amount does change. But currently, based on that, there is certainly enough of a balance in that account as well as enough revenues coming in to cover the cost of expanding the interpretation to subcommittee meetings.
Scott, the balance right now is?
It's about $53,000.
Okay. And outside of cost, we know you do a wonderful job with the full city council meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something Holyoke Media, and we know can do, but is willing to do?
The interpretation?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with how this account works, we're directed by the mayor, on the authority of the mayor, to pay for whatever invoices that he sends us as related to cable-related purposes, which is the kind of overarching moniker on anything that comes in with the franchise fees. And so this isn't us doing it. This is us just cutting the check, which the mayor has already expressed a interest and willingness on.
But the actual services, who would oversee?
The city.
Okay. We know who in the city is going to do that?
Well, I mean, you have a contract with a company to provide those services.
Is that how the full city council works?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that. I'm just learning something. Any discussion? Councilor Pilo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Who's the contractor?
Transfluency?
Is that like a big major, like a statewide company, a national?
No, they're out of East Long Meadow.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Do they do other municipalities?
I'm unsure.
Okay. Can you find out?
Yeah, I'm happy to ask.
Thanks.
Councilor Tomlin?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So you're saying that it would, compared to last year, that you're running the hours that the subcommittee meetings have met last year. So you
Yes.
figure on the average, that's what it's going to be.
It's just,
If you-
yeah, I mean, it's just
Comparative.
to give a frame of reference of
Okay.
how many hours of subcommittee meetings there were last year. Again, there may be more, there may be less.
Okay, and you said it would probably approximate $42,000,
Yes,
and you're putting in $12,000 a quarter? So
Yes.
that would be $48,000 then?
correct. And there's an existing balance in the account.
There's
as well.
already an existing one, okay. And the mayor is the one that directs
Yes,
you to pay the bill every,
Yes.
what is it, a monthly bill? Bi-monthly or?
yeah, I think it waffles a little bit, but I think it's bi-monthly.
And is there any times, and I know a couple of times we've had a school building committee, sometimes the person is not be able to show up right away. Does that happen with our full council meeting where somebody isn't there? And is there a way to, like a backup person to be there? Or is it pretty much guaranteed that they're always there?
I think there has been instances where something has come up. Again, that administration, though, that happens on the city side, so Jeffrey would be probably the person to ask about that.
Okay.
As I recall, I think there's been at least one case where there was some force majeure where nobody could be here.
But it's not a common thing.
No, not at all. And normally what happens is we'll send the files to them after the fact, and then they'll generate the interpretation after.
Interpretation afterwards.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
If I could ask a question to our auditor. Tanya, you understood what we just learned about Hoyok Media and the money's coming back to the city to pay for this service. Is this something the mayor now will have to present to the council as an appropriation?
I got it. So, no, it won't have to be an appropriation because I do feel like we should be getting cash receipts going in. But as you were just speaking, I checked the account and there's actually a negative balance in there. And there has been no cash receipts received all year for that. You're talking about government access channel, right? TV, cable TV. We do usually get checks in from the cable company.
No, they come directly to us.
Do they come to you? Because if you could just send me your information so I can reconcile those cash receipts. I don't see any going in that fund for the year.
Yeah, I'm not sure what cash receipts, like, there's certainly nothing that we would have applied to that. So let's.
Is it your own checking account or it's nothing to, I just thought you said it had to do with the mayor's office.
Yeah,
So we would be accounting for that in the general ledger, right?
I don't believe so.
So not at all?
Again, I'm
Oh, okay, no,
I'm
I
not the
just
authority on
thought,
this. How it's set out, though, is just that we're told to pay invoices out of this account for,
from your own accounts?
yes.
Oh, okay.
An account
So
that we
I
administer.
misunderstood, so I
Yes.
apologize.
No, but it's the
Don't
mayor.
let me make you all nervous.
It's, no, what, the reason I asked the question is because I miss, this with the full city council service of our interpretation of our meetings. I thought Hoyok Media, was doing it, but they're just paying for it. So the mayor is responsible for it.
Yeah.
This is money coming back to the city. We understand the franchise fee. Nothing
So
wrong there.
thought the franchise fee from like Comcast comes into the city,
It always
No,
did.
it is not.
but we
No.
probably hand it over to you guys.
No, it doesn't
does
come
not
to
go
the
to the
city.
mayor's office?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. I was
See,
a little
that's-
worried for a minute.
Historically, it always came through the city.
I thought it, I
And
thought
things
so.
have changed, and
That's fine.
we don't know exactly how those things changed, except that they did. But
I can follow up.
the
with
mayor can't spend money on behalf of the city.
I thought all of that would have to actually go through the
Yeah.
city if it's in the city's name. So, like I said, I can follow up. I might misunderstand.
Okay.
That's
I
fine.
think to save future, I don't want to say embarrassment, but future issues, we just got to kind of put it in the right order.
Hey,
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. If they're paying the bills out from their own account, then I wouldn't see that anymore.
I understand
I
that,
will follow
but
up.
they're not responsible for what is generating the bill, and they're not responsible for the vendor who's providing the service. The city is. So now it becomes our problem.
That's why I was looking for it. So that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Jordan has joined us. Welcome, Kevin. We're on item number 1. Councilor Bacon has joined us in the chamber, and Councilor someone else is joining us. Jose Maldonado Velez is joining us right now. Not quite a panelist. We're on item number 1. We just heard a presentation from Scott McPherson with the Holyoke Media about the franchise money being set aside to do the interpretation for subcommittee meetings. We learned that the mayor negotiates with a vendor to do this service, and Holyoke Media pays the invoices that the mayor's office forwards to Holyoke Media.
Yeah.
We're going to check into couple things with the mayor, the procedure there.
Yeah.
But we certainly understand the service, and I think we're all in favor of it.
ma-
Yes, we do.
Counselor, if I may speak to just one thing?
Please, go ahead, yeah.
Sure. So so there's the current cable franchise. When that was renegotiated last, MOU was generated between the school department, the municipality, and Holyoke Media for the provision of public access services, and to talk about any associated reporting or anything like that takes place. And it's in that MOU that spells out that a portion of the percentage of the revenues that come in is encumbered for a year by the city to be spent at the discretion of the mayor.
Which I recall. I would have thought a little different, but I know how it's evolved, and that's fine. We're not so much questioning that as much as the way we work. There needs to be a checks and balance.
Sure.
Not just of the money being spent, but of what it's being spent on. And if the mayor's office is responsible for negotiating, for contracting with a vendor to do the service, that needs to come, a little bit of that needs to come through this chamber. And that's all I'm pointing out. For those who just joined us, the numbers given, 2022, we had 281 hours of subcommittee meetings. 279 of those hours were because of Councilor Jordan.
No, come on, no way.
With the direction of the mayor, Scott just told us that $53,000 on a quarterly $12,000 revenue tag, again, I'm not too sure how to call that, has been put aside, and the money is there. Feels that you don't always know what the revenue is going to be, but feels that the money is there to provide this revenue for the city and for the service to take place. That's about where we are.
Said another way, how much is it, it's costing $53,000 a year to do interpretation services?
No,
42. I
No.
missed that. 42.
53 is what's in
Yeah.
the account now.
But 42,000 would pay for the 281 hours.
Correct.
So it's an hourly thing. So we'll have to.
Is it more for the full council meetings and all that, or is that a separate line, or is that included?
No, that's for the interpretation of the city council as well as the
Generally.
subcommittee meetings, generally. Just as a frame of reference, right now, for the cost of just doing exclusively the city council for the same calendar year, it was $11,000.
It went from 11 to 42?
To expand from doing just the council to doing the
Everything.
council and the council.
It went from
subcommittee
11 to
meetings.
42.
Yeah.
Interesting, okay.
It's an hourly rate.
Yeah.
Right, that's why I was kind of get my little trusty calculator. I was kind of interested in what the,
Yeah, and again, I just want to be incumbently clear. This is based on last year's numbers that were kind of generously figured, just to give a frame of reference on what the associated costs are.
okay, just so you said 42,000 and you get 281 hours?
Yes.
No, I'm just checking my calculator says 42,000 divided by 281. Is that 150 an hour?
Yeah. Yes, because it's 75 an hour, but you need 2 interpreters.
2 people, yeah.
Is that I'm sorry. Is that a little steep to you? Does that sound 75 an hour?
So, I personally didn't think it was.
Okay. And we needed 2.
Yeah.
Why again?
They switch off every 20 minutes. Or, for example, if somebody has to go to the bathroom or whatever.
So $150 an hour to do our meetings. And Comcast gives us the money,
On the franchise, on the fee that we,
but that's money that you
consumer.
could theoretically be using for something else then. I mean, you know,
Well, the money that this account is coming from is encumbered
Quarterly.
to be used at the direction of the mayor.
12,000 quarterly. That's
So this is just a portion of the revenues that come in, but that portion of the revenue is fully encumbered for a year.
wow.
If I may, it's important, I hear what you're saying, Kevin, about it seeming like a steep cost. I think the thing to keep in mind is that these are people who are real-time interpreting. That's a very specialized skill.
Right.
And they have to, and because it is extremely taxing to do that kind of work, they have to switch off.
Sure.
Because somebody has to be paying like super close attention and translating in real time. So that's what that's all about. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and I'm not opining it's good, bad, otherwise. I'm just sort of absorbing the information. At first blush, it does seem at 150 an hour, it does seem pricey. Is there other opportunities to do an AI service on the bottom that would have Spanish closed caption, which, again, keeping in mind, if it got it 90% accurate or 95% accurate, and that we could do for a nominal charge or something so that people get the vast gist of what's going on as opposed to $150 an hour, is that something we could even consider?
So I've looked into this a little bit, and I will state from the outset it's been a little bit since I
Okay.
looked into it. So if it's a little mushy around the edges, forgive me. So in order to do AI-based captioning, first of all, you need a captioning server.
Okay.
You need Comcast to agree to take the captioning. My sense is they wouldn't squawk at that. You need a captioning server that generates the caption itself, and then you need a captioning encoder as well, which embeds it into the video feed so that it can be decoded by Comcast.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, you have to pay for the service to generate the captions. So it's hardware and software. And I can actually give you ballpark ideas
Okay.
on those costs. The
Do you know
captioning
those?
servers and the encoders run about $50,000 per channel of output.
Okay.
And then,
But we have one channel of output, right?
yes.
Okay.
And then the hourly, I can email that to you.
Okay.
I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I can get that. It's not inexpensive.
So let's do, maybe though, if we invested the 50 grand, because this is annually, right? So maybe we look at it as, because we always want to provide these services, right? This is
Yeah.
a commitment
Yeah.
we've made so that everybody can participate and feel fully invested in what's going on. On the other hand, this isn't a one-shot deal, so this is long-term. So if the question is we need to pay 50 grand for some equipment, but in the long run, it saves us, that might be something to consider.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly, that's something we can look at. Again, there is ongoing costs with a captioning server, though. I'm
Well, let us
not
know.
remembering well how much it was.
The other thing is, I'm wondering, is there, some sort of, okay, maybe these guys are like, they're probably working the United Nations or something, or they're in courtrooms where they're giving word for word level of that. Is it possible that we could get somebody who's really good, you know, but maybe they're not that level with these type of certifications to translate it for folks, and we put out an application where somebody says, you know what, hey, I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to do it where, you know, $30 an hour or $40 an hour or some reasonable thing, and we don't have to have two of them, right? Where, you know what, if they put it out, you know, maybe the issue is it isn't, you know, they give it as best as they can for live, and then they, because we run these things constantly, right?
Yeah.
On Hoyok Media.
Yes.
Maybe if they had an opportunity where they had to step out for 20 minutes, which probably don't need that, but, you know, maybe 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, then, you know, they could fix that on the tape, right, later. Like, they could add that, we'd pay them whatever to do editing,
Yeah.
to come back to that. It seems like, you know, I just want us to think this through in a financially conscious sense. How do we provide the service? And there's probably people in the community be like, whoa, I could get 30, 40 bucks an hour to do this? You might get people jumping at it that aren't with all the fancy certifications. Because, I mean, if they miss a comma here or an and, I mean, this isn't going into some major, transcript. Because if somebody wanted to question or challenge something that happened at a public hearing or whatever, they can pull the tape, order a transcript, and we could do a translation, or they could do the translation at that time if it was something that serious, right? So I don't know. What do you?
One of the things that came up as a point of information, and I don't know if everyone remembers this, when we were first talking about doing this translation, there was concern among counselors that their words be translated directly and not a gist being given. And I think that's something to really think about, all of the counselors here, that we don't want to rely on somebody who doesn't have training to translate and to give a gist, because that might insert opinion or impression that isn't accurate. And so I would just like to raise that. The other thing on your point, Counselor Jordan, on the subject of like AI translation, having it on screen, one thing to consider is that it leaves out people who may not be literate. And if we're talking about open government, which of course we are, we do want to try to make sure that it is accessible to everybody. So those are a couple of things to consider.
Well, yes, I suppose that, but if that's true, then, you're getting into a lot of different sub-levels on a lot of different, what if I'm Polish, or what if there's all kinds of subgroups into, now you have to be, I don't understand English, I can't read Spanish either, and you could have 10 translators, and then we could have a Russian resident and a Polish resident and an Italian. I don't know, where do you stop at a certain point? I'm just saying we're trying to open this up as much as possible, but I'm just saying, again, haven't formed an opinion, not saying I'm against it by any means. Maybe this is the best alternative. I'm only saying $150 an hour. I don't know if that number was thrown around in advance before we started doing this. I don't know. Did you guys know it was all $150 an hour? I didn't know it was $150 an hour. But anyways, we'll do whatever we got to do to get it done, and I'm not saying change it now, but let's think about if there is a more cost-effective way to do this and think it through. And as far as people not catching it exactly, what I get worried about is, yes, if there was a translation that's changing completely, people giving their opinions on things, that's one thing. But I think if you guys are monitoring it and checking once in a while to have this, you can see if people are pretty close on it. So I'm not as worried about that as much as if we can save, give some Holyoke resident a 30, 40 an hour dollar job and they can do it versus paying, $150 an hour to somebody who, I don't know, there's East Long Meadow.
Yeah.
So maybe we can help a Holyoker, right? Give a Holyoker a job for 30 or 40 bucks an hour. So something to think about. We keep doing what we're doing for now, but let's think about potentially other solutions.
Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Yeah, I believe when we interviewed translucent?
Transfluency.
I think they did mention the hourly rate in that interview. I think they mentioned it. And I also wanted to state that the problem I have with AI is that it takes jobs away. And I think that's important to know. But I'm almost certain that during the interviews, they did clarify how much it would cost.
Maybe I will. You know what? This might have been done when I was gone.
I don't think.
Oh, I wasn't here then.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So that might.
You're on vacation.
Or it might have been last term.
Yeah.
I had a 4-year hiatus. So. Okay. Well.
You're against AI? I thought you liked R2D2.
And I still do.
The point, though, to Councilor Jane is no one's monitoring this. Am I right?
Oh, no, we're not.
No,
I mean, we
there's nobody monitoring
we
it.
monitor that it's
What
being
goes out, goes
recorded
out.
clearly.
We have no, I have no clue. And that's, I did make that point when we were talking about this
that's-
originally. It's not so much the perfect translation interpretation. It's when editorial comments start being injected or views start being injected.
Right.
Then we have a problem.
Exactly.
And we don't have a problem if it's a professional who has been trained and is specialized in this real-time translation. Like that's,
Yeah.
That's the feeling we got when we interviewed them, that they understood that.
Yeah.
And, but I thought it still came under Holyoke Media. Shame on me, I didn't understand that part, but
Yeah,
now I do.
what had happened, councilors?
But if something happens where the revenue doesn't come in, the city's responsible for this contract. So there's no checks and balance there. Sorry.
So just speaking, Councilor Jordan, to what you mentioned, I think there is opportunity to find other interpreters. What had happened last time is I brought a list of interpreters that I had found to the council, and they offered to interview all of them and selected one from the group that had been brought to them. And again, our role in this really is just paying the bill. We're not getting in the middle of it in any way, shape, or form. Just because there was a concern by our lawyers about it creating liability.
Yeah. I'm just.
Any further discussion?
We'll have to look into it more. Right?
Okay. This is a request by Councilor McGee. He apologizes for not being here, but he just wanted to have this open discussion. We appreciate Holyoke Media being here, our auditor filling us in, and the appropriate motion would be it's now complied with, and we'll report this back to the full city council next week.
A motion to be complied with?
Second?
Motion made second that the order's been complied with. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. Thank you. Thank you again.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Item number 2.
Motion to take item number 2 off the table?
Introduced under my name for the mayor, that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the council hereby accepts the provisions of the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency FY22 EMPG. It's a $20,150 no-match grant. We authorize the establishment of a fund or method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Off the table, all those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. Jeff Trask is with us. I think this is going to be a fantastic presentation because I read a little bit.
It'll be
Jeff,
very quick.
and Please fill us in what we're going to do with this.
All right, so this grant is an annual grant that we get. We do an in-kind match with this, so our budget basically matches the grant, so it's a win for everybody. The funding is actually going to be used to purchase a aerial and an underwater drone. So this way we'll have the most up-to-date aerial surveillance capability. It'll be operated out of the fire department, where they have 2 trained drone pilots, and they have a whole drone team and program. So this will be a great upgrade for their equipment. And also having the underwater drone is going to be a bonus, especially with all the waterways that we have here in Holyoke. You can put the drone in there. It has the ability to, it's got a camera. I believe it has, the one that we're getting actually has an arm that can articulate and grab things, and sonar capability. So you put a drone in there, you don't have to put a firefighter or other first responder in there. And the aerial drone, again, with all the wooded area we have with the mountain, it's going to give us some great capabilities, and the new technology is incredible. I remember 10 years ago using a drone for public safety, and the thing would fly maybe 15, 20 minutes at most. The cameras weren't high resolution. Now, I mean, it's 4K resolution. They fly for almost an hour, and actually the setup that we're getting has multiple batteries, so you can continuously use it, and by the time the 4th battery is used, the first battery is already recharged. So you can continue, so like, especially with search and rescue, I think those are. The other thing is that the drone team is also available to other city departments. So if the building department, for example, wanted to do assessments of roofs or damage to buildings, they have that asset now. It just makes things easier. And it's a citywide asset, which is great. So we get this money every year. We always look for something that we can, has multiple uses and that can be used by the entire city. And this was what kind of the group came up with, and looking forward to purchasing it.
Jeff, so it's 2 drones, the aerial and the underwater?
Yes. Yeah. So they're about, give or take, around 10,000 each for the public safety professional grade ones. And depending on supply chain, I mean, we should be able to get the aerial drone no problem. I think the underwater one might take a little bit more time just because of supply chain. But the performance period of this grant allows us to, to procure those in a timely fashion.
And our operators will be trained in terms of
yeah,
rules and regs of
yeah.
live and can't do.
So one of the things that we had to do as part of this particular grant was actually to create a drone policy, which Law Department did review, and the Board of Fire Commissioners actually signed off on. So FEMA actually requires it as a condition of this grant.
And my only, no problem, Tanya, the language says no match, but Jeff is telling us there is an in-kind match, which is fine. But I think we got to get that in the language.
Normally, and I can definitely change that up for you before it goes to city council, but normally when they submit the grants, they tell me if there's a match or not, so I may not have known that, but I can definitely change it before you vote if you like.
I think if you're comfortable, we'll ask the law department. We can vote on this knowing that there's an in-kind match.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think. I mean, we'll know Tuesday night, but we don't want to hold it up.
Okay, just let me know if I need to change the wording, and I can do that.
I'm speaking for myself, too. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no actual money from the city that would be going, it's not like, the total bill is 20,000 and we're getting a grant for 10 and the city has to appropriate 10. It's going to be just in kind through our budget that we normally get.
Can I just ask a question? Where does that the in-kind match get tracked?
It gets tracked as part of the application, so they do ask for us to designate a match. So what we'll do is we'll provide evidence from we'll usually submit them a copy of our budget.
Okay.
And they just, and they track it for their purposes. But we exceed, the match requirement for this particular grant right now.
I just want to make sure it's like documented somewhere for everyone.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I mean, sometimes they'll ask for, usually as part of the closeout too, they'll ask us for, any, let's say we have a revised match estimate or whatever, or a, sometimes they'll ask us for the canceled checks. It's reimbursable
Okay.
anyway, so they're gonna.
Yeah, no, that's
Unless we meet all their rules, they're not going to give us our money back. So.
okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank
The
you,
motion
Tanya.
to be approved.
Thank you, Jeff.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that we approve this request and refer this to the full city council. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Thanks, Jeff,
Great,
as
thank you,
always.
counselors.
See ya.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
If we could take 3 and 4 as a package.
Second.
Motion to take
made
3 and
seconded,
4.
Suspend the rules and
Off
take
the
items
table.
3 and 4 as a package. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. Item 3 is introduced by Councilor VACON, that the road improvements be made on Homestead Avenue from Cherry Street to Lower Westfield Road, including repairing sinking, broken sewers, etc. Please see citizens petition from the residents. This is referred to the mayor and finance committee to determine funding source from the DPW and Veolia. Indicated that at the moment there is no money for repairs. Item 4, similar, but is introduced by Councilor Bartley. The DPW replaced the sidewalk on Queen Street between Coit and King Street. This was recently reviewed by the DPW superintendent and the Ward 3 councilor, referred to the DPW finance and the mayor on May 16th. So we did receive, everybody, if you don't see it, there's a copy in your packet of an email from our city engineer, Chris Baker. And I'll read it for everybody who's watching us. The response to item number 3, which is Councilor VACON's order, is Homestead Ave. Okay, this is a reply, right? This is Chris's reply. Homestead Avenue from Westfield Road to Cherry Street is on the preliminary list of resurfacing for calendar year 2024. The list has not been finalized and is pending field review of road segments under consideration. The resurfacing would include adjustments of structures. The section from Westfield Road to Lower Westfield Road has higher PCI values and was crack sealed this year. The adjustment of several structures is in the list of priorities for Veolia. Am I saying that right?
Veolia.
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 They have started work. They have started work back up in this fiscal year. That's the response. With the committee's permission, I'll just refer to Councilor VACON. The city engineer, the DPW superintendent, the commissioners. Nobody could be present this evening. The mayor, not on this item, but on all items, sent his apologies. He does have a conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I understand his response. The only thing, and I didn't call him today to get clarification on it, was what the meaning of the higher PCR values meant. I wasn't sure if that meant it had a better chance of getting resurfaced sooner, or if it meant that the patching was to reduce the problem. So, but I can reach out to him to get more clarification on that. But I'm happy to hear that there is something going on, and my understanding is, from what you're reading, that Veolia is actually going to do some work on those sewer covers and broken sewers. Is that your interpretation?
From what we just read, yes. I've had no conversation with the city engineer. And I am certainly in favor of receiving information like this via email and available for the committee. It's not a pet peeve, but my only position is, and you just asked a good question, is emails can't answer questions. But it is something, and I understand we can follow up and get an answer for that.
Yeah, and I have found our engineer to be very responsive. I just didn't happen to reach out today, but I can do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion from the committee? Any other discussion? Would you like us to have it complied with, or would you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Motion item number 3 is complied with.
Second.
Motion made, second, item 3 is complied with. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. And then item number 3 is already off the table. This is Councilor Bartley's order.
Number 4.
Number 4, sorry. The response from the engineer is that this section of sidewalk, we're talking about Queen Street between Coit and King. This section of sidewalk is on the list of potential replacement using $100,000 sidewalk funding available through the city funding. This list has not been finalized and will be based on many factors, including identifying important pedestrian generators. For example, a high priority is around schools, commercial storefront locations and public service lines like transit, open space, parks, etc. And that's the response. Councilor Bartley was not available to join us this evening. I know he received the email, but I have no communication if he wants us to hold on to this or accept it as complied with.
I'd say complied with.
Yeah,
I got
I
the
think
answer.
Motion made and seconded, it's complied with. We can always refer it back if.
Basically,
so
Chris is saying that it sounds like while the list hasn't been finalized, there is some money available. So,
Better when they tell us there's zero money available and they go asking the auditor to find some.
yes.
And the motion is complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. We have one more from the city engineer, and that's
Item number 5?
number 5.
6. Oh, I'm sorry, 5. You're right.
5, on
I
the
apologize.
motion made and seconded to take off the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is it's an annual grant, our portion of it. It's under Mass General Laws 44, Section 53A. It's the Pioneer Valley Authority fiscal, it says 24, Connecticut River cleanup portion. This particular grant is split between 3 communities. Our share this year is $210,000. I'm pretty sure, as it has been for the last couple years, the other 2 communities are Chicopee and Springfield. We've been getting, because of our project readiness, which a big part of this, I believe, is Jackson Street, if I'm right, is why we've got a larger portion the last few years. In prior years, sometimes Chicopee or Springfield will get the larger portion, but we always get something each year. I know the particulars. We understand how this money is spent. We understand, I think, the CSO issue, how important it is. We understand we're under a mandate, Clean Air Water Act mandate, and can be fined at any minute when we're not complying with that mandate. And we understand the engineer had talked to us about, I was hoping to ask some questions tonight about about bonding for a future project, which is not a problem, except we don't know the sewer rate that would be necessary, or more important, the revenue to pay for that bond without raising the sewer rate or what that raise would entail. What I'm trying to say is, I mean, it's a lot of money. I know it's going to be put to good use. I wish we had someone to make a presentation about what's going on this year. Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, I'm just, he did put a thing together on this, if you want to.
I will read this as I read the other 2. I apologize.
That'd be good.
And there is a second memo from the, maybe I should. Okay, let me read the email first and see if it captures it, but this is from our city engineer, Chris Baker, in response to this grant. The city of Holyoke was awarded a portion of the fiscal 24 funding allocated to the Connecticut River Cleanup Committee to assist with the reduction of combined sewer overflows to the Connecticut River. The DPW has been working on, over the past decade, to implement the long-term control plan, and funding provided through the CRCC has been instrumental in helping the city make progress towards achieving these goals. This is now citing the River Terrace project, which you know is the next CSO project in line. Separation project is included in the city's draft long-term plan, and a consent decree filed 3/22 of this year, 2023, requires the city to complete phase 1 for the separation of CSO area 21A by the end of 2027. The project is currently in the 2023 final CWSRF intended use plan. A total loan amount of $10.5 million discussion was ongoing with Senator Warren, Senator Markey's offices regarding partial funding of the project using congressionally directed funding. This grant will fund the continuation of the design work. And we're going back to the $210,000. Will fund the continuation of the design work necessary for the project to move forward. Completion of the final 100% design permitting of the River Terrace 21A sewer separation project with 100% issued bid contract documents. These documents will be prepared, submitted as part of the CWSRF application package. Public education, open public meetings to residents of the River Terrace area, SRF application, prepare the SRF application package for the city, bidding services for advertising, bidding, management, pre-bid conferences, recommendations of the city, of which I understand about 64% of what I just read. Although I understand Chris Baker is far more intelligent in this area than I will ever be, and certainly trust our city engineer and the members of the DPW, but I'll leave it up to the committee if we want to try to move this forward with.
I make a motion to approve it.
Motion made and second that we adopt the approval of accepting the $210,000. We know there is no match, and we thank our city engineer for giving us the information he has provided to us. And we will have a sometime in the future, another discussion on that long-term plan and funding of that long-term plan, because it's going to come quick. And I think what's happening, not just Ahoyoke but a number of communities have, I'm guessing we are well over our threshold of, discharge into the Connecticut River, even though some of the storms are certainly qualify for forgiveness just because of the size of the storm. I think we're going to see some additional pressure from the DEP and so forth.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, one brief update is I did have an opportunity on an unrelated matter, but I did make the point to bring it up and make it a related matter. I had an opportunity to talk to Congressman Neal a couple of weeks ago, and I brought up this whole issue about the 21 million. And during that conversation, it didn't sound like he was aware of the extent of some of these next two phases coming. So the mayor's office and Chris, both to their credit, were able to get that package over to him. So I saw Senator Warren, Senator Markey's name mentioned, but now Congressman Neal also has that information. So hopefully, in the largesse that is the federal government, they could find 21 million for the good people of Holyoke to help us with this, or at least a good piece of it, So we have money for everything else.
That's excellent news.
Yep.
If there's no further discussion, a motion to adopt, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Motion made second to take up item number 6.
Off the table? Yep.
This is under Mass General Laws in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 53. In accordance, the City Council hereby accepts the provisions of the fiscal year 2024 State 911 Department Emergency Medical Dispatch 24,500 no match grant, and authorizes the establishment of fund and other method for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures and resources associated with said grant. Off the table, all those in favor? Any opposed? We have, I believe, Sergeant Zurheide with us this evening. Sergeant?
His name's there.
Sergeant, if you can hear us, can you let us know if it's a technical difficulty? We refer you to the Wizard of Oz chamber.
He's unmuted.
No, I know he's off mute, but he's not on video, so I can't tell.
Something on his end.
Okay. We can hang, well, we got a few. I know the sergeant's here for the next few items.
All right. 6, 7, 8 are all police?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Why don't we, Sergeant, if you can hear us, just do what you can do. Maybe you want to reboot, retry, get back in. Jeff will get you right in. And while you're doing that, we'll go to item number
9.
9.
Well, table 6, 7, and 8.
Table 6, 7, and 8 to allow time for Sergeant Zurheide to reconnect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Moving to item number 9, introduced by Councilor Jordan and Councilor VACON, that the auditor, if needed, relevant department heads, and mayor, please review the free cash certification with the Finance Committee and City Council. Off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. To the makers of the order, we do have our auditor, as always. Tanya, welcome. And, to the makers of the order, if you want to just set the table here. I think it speaks for itself, but.
Yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward. We were hoping that we would get sort of a walkthrough of, I don't know if there's a handout for the meeting, but I didn't see anything, but, I think it was something in the order of maybe 4.1 million, something like that. If we could get a walkthrough as to how we got to that number.
So I apologize you don't have the handout. I did actually send it in, but it was a while ago when the free cash was certified. I can definitely send it out to you guys again if you like, or Jeffrey can. So at the beginning of the free cash calculation for fiscal year 2023, they start off with an unreserved, undesignated fund balance of 7.3 million. So that is all of the city's funding that is not appropriated within their budget, not reserved or encumbered for any purpose. They start with that figure, and then they take out the receivables for personal property and real estate taxes. The personal property tax receivable was 509,000. The real estate tax receivable was 3,644,878, and the receivables
Could you just go a little slower? Because
Oh.
I'm trying to write down what you're saying as you're saying. I may need a translator myself.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we start off with a top line number of 7.3 million of unappropriated monies. Okay, so that's, all things held equal, that's how much we would get if there weren't these offsets, correct?
That is the difference between our total fund balance, which is a running balance of all of our cash, and then you take out what you've encumbered for all of your projects, all of your costs, even from previous years, and also what you're appropriated for that fiscal year.
Okay. All right, so 509 was for,
509 is for personal property tax receivables.
personal property receivable.
Billing
Okay.
that's gone out but hasn't been received.
All right, so that's an addition. That's an addition then.
No,
A subtract,
that's a deduction.
a subtraction.
Oh, but if
Because
it's
it's-
money, go ahead.
It's a receivable, so it's considered a liability on the balance sheet because it's money that we've billed out, that we're owed, but that we have not received yet.
What's the line?
Oh,
So that's
interesting.
the-
So it's already counted in the 7.3, but you're taking it off because it hasn't been received yet.
Right, because
I
we
see.
use a
Right.
deferred revenue process, so that's.
Oh, okay. That makes
It's not an
sense.
accrual process, but deferred
All right.
revenue, so we're counting.
It's at
on-
risk, potentially.
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
All right, and then what was the next number, please? It was like,
That's okay. Real estate taxes receivable was 3.6 million.
3
That's
points.
also deducted.
Yeah, okay.
Then what else is included is other receivables, overdrawn accounts, and deficits. These are things like our scholarship funds, our grants, any variances in our receivables from the tax collector versus the general ledger, any refunds that are due to people that have not been paid out.
What was that total, please?
It is 2.4 million.
Okay. Can you give us the notable ones there? Do you have a breakdown of?
I do. We do have a resurfacing project that's debt that was in deficit for 371,000, so that's a bigger one. We have 503,000 in appropriation deficits, and that is made up of dental trust, retirement, and FICA taxes on payroll.
All right, let me, hold on, I'm writing this down.
I can
so-
send all of this to you.
No, I know, but
Okay.
that's not going to do me any good now to ask you questions about them right now. So
All right.
retirement, dental, I appreciate you sending them, but I want to ask stuff about this tonight.
course.
So it's retirement, dental, and what was the other one, please? FICA?
Payroll
Okay, so that's
taxes.
so payroll tax, okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So, when you get to it, can you let us know how the grant deficits this year compared to last year?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I didn't add them all up, but I mean.
Roughly.
Yeah. We do have Chapter 90, which is in deficit, which is a state
Yeah.
refunds for highways and bridges.
How much was that, Tanya?
297,721.
297, okay, we'll just call it 300. All right.
Yep. We have complete streets, also state funded, 154. And the only other bigger one was our Title I through our schools, which was $345,000.
Thanks.
We have cash variances from the reconciliation done in the treasurer's office of $167,000.
So that's money that they thought they had in cash, but they didn't.
Yes.
Okay,
That's the larger ones.
all right.
I can say that if you're looking at the list of the grant funds, it looks a lot better. It's smaller. The problem is that the deficits are larger in some of them, which is, I want to say it's like the Chapter 90 has to be reimbursed, sent in by 9/30, and that wasn't done, but we also had a little bit of turnover there. So there's some things, even in the schools, they had turnover, so there were some reimbursements that weren't filed in a timely fashion. And the majority of these have been cleaned up.
Oh, okay.
Because this is from 2022.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so in the end, they have we have a deferred revenue balance of 3.4 that is deducted, and we end up with the free cash calculation for 2022 of 4.1. And that is for the general funds.
And if I can, how much in that 7.3 million is the ARPA?
So the ARPA is not included.
It's not.
Nope, the ARPA actually is cash that we receive.
Okay.
So we have all of that cash, so
Okay.
all of the funds have a positive balance.
Oh, okay. All right.
We
Thank you.
monitor those very well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. On the ARPA point, though, that's just an overall. This is just money that's went unappropriated, right? We didn't actually use it, the 7.3, the top line. But theoretically, if we didn't have the 2 million in ARPA, the number would be 5.3 potentially, right? Because then we would have needed to use other resources to pay
Right, because
those.
that 2.9 or
It all goes into
whatever
the
it happened
pot.
to be 1.7 that year does go
Right.
into the city's fund,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep. Okay. So, so let's take a look here. Does anything seem unusual to you on the 4.1 million that was personal property and the real estate tax receivable?
No, that's normal because you're just still sending out your real estate taxes, so they have a
Okay.
deadline. I know that the tax collector is working on that. Technically, I think it could be lower, but it would have had to been more active collections, which we do now.
Okay. So there was a resurfacing project. How did that, I'm assuming you asked these different department heads
Absolutely.
what's going on here. So the resurfacing project, why was that overspent by 300?
So the resurfacing project is actually a capital. So when we took out the short-term debt for the coverage of the deficit at the end of the year, that account was missed. That's been reconciled, and I want to say I'm completed by now, that resurfacing project.
So say that again to me, that when we bonded for it, we just forgot about including that bill, or?
So at the end of the fiscal year for 6/30, we take out short-term notes to cover all of our deficits in our capital funds,
Okay.
and that was not included on that list.
Does that sound correct for you, that we should take out short-term notes to cover our capital funds?
I mean, if we don't do it, then we would have to pay out all of millions and millions of dollars from our free cash, because that's what they include for their deficits.
Is it a way of borrowing, though, to just pump up the free cash?
I don't feel like it because of the fact that you're going to take out long-term debt for it anyways.
Okay.
So it is debt, you're authorizing the debt, and when you're authorizing that debt, you're already saying that, that's going to be bonded. So you're going to cover it all with the short term at the end of the fiscal year, so it doesn't impact the cash that you have, because you know that in the end, you're going to bond for it.
Is that included in the original authorization? Does the city council need to approve those short-term
No,
borrowing?
that comes from the treasurer's office.
They alone can do that.
With the mayor, obviously. We all work together in covering the deficits and working on the capital projects. But don't forget, you have the school ones in there too. So if you have a $5 million, roof project that isn't bonded yet, and you can't bond it because you haven't gotten all of your MSBA receipts in, and you don't have an audit, they would automatically be taking that $5 million deficit out of your cash, and you don't want that.
Right. Okay. The $500,000 for retirement, dental, and FICA. We've had issues in this one in the past where they didn't calculate the premiums correctly. So as a result, the accounts went short so that we didn't collect either enough from the employees or we underestimated how much was supposed to be. And as a result, the city has to pay 100% because I know I'm going to ask you, what's the explanation before I get into some of the history? What was the story on this 500, if you know?
So, like you said, with the dental, that I want to say nobody really explained the dental trust, but I have been a part of that. With the dental trust, the employees pay 50%, we pay 50%.
Right.
And if they are obviously deducted from the employee's paycheck, then we will end up in deficit. So that's the dental trust. And if the premiums are higher and they never recalculated the employee piece of it, it will also end up in deficit. And I do know that the city has had to make up for many of the dental payments because of deficits in these accounts. For retirement, they did not include one of the payments for the early retirement. And the FICA is based on, the salaries of the employees. So if people are getting increases and you're not calculating for that, your FICA will also be off.
In terms of our portion of it, right? Because, the employees, we're paying 1.4 and the employees paying, because we don't have Social Security involved like a
Right.
traditional private employer, so we don't have the 6.2 involved.
Yes.
But for the 1.4 Medicare portion, we didn't properly,
We didn't budget correctly.
we didn't estimate correctly for the 1.4. Okay. Because the employee portion would have been taken out of their pay regardless of.
Yes, and that would come out of that liability
Okay.
account. It also happened this year, so we are taking a better look. I mean, not this year, the end of 2023. That account was also short, so
Okay.
we're taking a better look at that. I did inform the mayor that we were short again in that account, so we could take a better look at what we're doing.
Okay. In terms of the dental trust, okay, so we didn't have any health insurance shortfall, just dental.
For 2023?
Or what was calculated into this year, yeah.
No, we did not have a health, no,
Oh, that's
it was
good.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, because dental, the key, and it's health insurance too, but we've had years in the past where they didn't calculate the premium correctly. So if you don't do that and you come up short at the end of the year, we can't go back to the employees and say, oh, we need your portion, back of whatever. We have to eat 100% of the shortfall. So I don't know if that's what's going on the dental trust.
The dental trust, the premium went up and we never adjusted the budget or the payroll.
I see.
And I know before I got here, they actually brought in some consultants to take a look at the health insurance and the dental trust accounts. And we actually had to recalculate and go back for like 5 years to straighten it out because you're taking this money from your employees, and you're supposed to be matching 50%, and in essence we weren't. So that's something that has been taken care of, but also you have to cover that
Right.
as a city.
So it was more a function of we didn't fund enough to cover our
Yes.
share.
Yep, so what happens is the payroll takes it out of the people's paychecks and then also grabs it now and puts it into the fund. So that way
Right.
the city is always paying the 50% no matter what. Whether
Okay.
you have the money or not, obviously.
All right. That's okay. That's a budgeting
Yes.
cue, which is not really, it's a hit here, but if we had it in the budget,
It would
we would have got it there. So I don't feel as bad about those.
Okay.
What I get concerned about is making sure it's not a premium miscalculation, because that's when we eat that. Because if we tell
Right.
the employee it's X and it turns out X isn't enough to cover the 50%,
Right.
we own that.
Absolutely.
Okay. But I know we've gone to largely fully funded. I know there is a discussion about going to self-funded for the health insurance, so that's probably less of an issue of us being wrong with fully funded, but okay. Now we had one here for complete streets, 154. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed there was 297 for chapter 90 deficit. What was that about, if you know?
Actually, it's funny because I do have the information from the engineer here, and I can tell you that he has reconciled both the complete streets and the chapter 90. As you're doing your projects, you need to obviously do reimbursements to the state for all of your projects. If they're not done in time or not done at all, you're not getting that money. If you do a reimbursement and it's not an allowable expense, then you're also eating that. I do have a sheet here from him that I could share with you if you like, that goes through
Yeah, could you
all
email
of
that
the-
to us?
Yeah, absolutely.
With the
And
other-
it goes through it does say that there is a loss, that they overspent by $1,000 on the Mass DOT shared winter street. So you
Okay.
can see that all of this has been reconciled, and he's been doing monthly reimbursements now, which is nice because it keeps us up to date.
Up
And
to
if
date.
there's not an allowable expense, then we can cover that in the general fund budget.
Okay, great. And I'm assuming this is the complete streets, is something similar?
Yeah, you have shared winter streets, complete streets, and chapter 90 are all the state's funding, where they have their projects approved ahead of time.
Okay. And then what was there was 345 for the schools. What was that?
So that was a Title I, which I can't really speak to. I don't have the notes, but I know that I also shared a spreadsheet with all of the communication that we had to all of the departments and the answers that we received.
Okay.
So if you want to take a look at that spreadsheet, I shared that probably back in June. I can resend
Yeah,
it.
if you could resend that, yeah.
Absolutely, I can
Thank
send
you.
all of this.
And then 167,000 for the cash variances in the treasurer's office. Could you go through that?
I just booked the reconciliation. I can't. It was a bunch of different transactions. It wasn't just one transaction. I could get that for you from the auditor if you like, because she's the one that actually put together the adjustments that we make. The external auditor. I know that I have it.
Does she have a discussion with her professional review as to how it happened and why it happened? Does she get into that level of detail?
She does discuss it. Well, she did discuss it with the consultants that we brought in and the treasurer. So as they're going through, the treasurer's reconciliation is what's going to tell you if your cash is off or not.
Okay.
And so they probably had the conversation with her
Okay.
about what they found in their reconciliation process through that year.
I'll add a question for the chairman. We gave them the 50 grand, you remember, to kind of keep them going for July and August. Where are they with the status of the expert team that they have down there? Are they coming in to give us a debrief? Because come August 30, whatever, they're out of money.
We've, I've had no feedback myself
Okay.
from the treasurer's office or from the mayor's office. They're on notice that we're expecting something. So hopefully we'll get something next Tuesday, and we can get something going in this committee.
Okay.
It's still, I'm settling in as far as I'm concerned. It's a lot of money, and it's been pointed out, we understand the issues, but I for one want to know what we got
For the first 300.
for the first,
Yeah.
300,000, and now take it to the next step. If, we're happy, what are we gonna get for the next?
Right.
And it's mind-boggling, I guess, but.
Yeah, yeah.
And more important, not so much the why, but what's the long-term fix?
Well, and we added now, for starting July 1st, we added back the deputy treasurer. We added a position to the office. How is that helping in the grand scheme of things, So they said they needed another position, so we did give them that. So hopefully that's part of the solution. Okay. So it was 7.3, and then it was minus 509, minus 3.6?
That's correct.
Okay.
Minus 2.4, minus 3.4.
Okay. All right, I'll go through all that again, but, all right, that was helpful. I can always follow up with you directly, Tanya, if I have
Okay, that's
any
fine,
more.
thank
Yeah.
you.
And then we'll save the
Tanya?
other ones for when
I just, one little bit more general question. Knowing, well, it's a fairly simple question.
Okay.
The information you provided for us in June is part of it, because we immediately gave the city council gave the mayor permission to spend a lot of the free cash. In the last 2 years, we've learned we can do that, even though we're taking a vote in the prior fiscal year going into the next fiscal year. And I think we got over that hump. One of the reasons we put this into committee also was, why was it June that we found out what the free cash certification is? Why? It's never been that late. Usually we're looking at October, November, maybe December, but June?
It should not be that late, but if we're behind in our offices, and we're behind in our cash receipts, and we're behind in our cash reconciliation, and we're behind in our audit, and we can't get our financial statements, then all of that it leads to your financial reports being late, which then turns out for your free cash to be submitted late. Our financial, we're just beginning our 2022 audit right now. They'll be in the next 2 weeks. We have a ton of things to submit, and we're technically 1 year behind right now in what we're doing. So if we don't speed up that process at all, you may not even, you might not even have your free cash certified next year in time for the next fiscal year, because we're further behind right now in the audit process than we've ever been since I've been here.
Oh, my goodness.
But we have to have the information. We have to have 2023 should be closed out right now. We should be thinking about doing our 2023 audit, and we just closed out 2022. I closed out 2022 2 weeks before I opened 2023. So that's the answer that I have. I don't. So it's a culmination.
And that, without the treasurer here, I don't want to get into a detailed conversation, but is the reconciliation getting any better? Where are we? How far behind are they?
For the reconciliation process, I want to say the end of fiscal year 2022.
Which is not good.
No, because 2023 is closed. We haven't done our quarterly reconciliation with our auditors, the quarterly cash reconciliation with the general ledger. We've only been able to put in the first quarter.
Why?
We have cash receipts up until April.
Why?
Why?
We spent $300,000 for an outside company to be coming in to help a department that we're spending $300,000 for. So why?
I would also like to know why.
Well, so, and I'm not asking this to be fresh,
No.
but
are. Yes,
we If- are.
Good. How are you?
if you don't know,
Trying.
who does know?
I mean, I would have a conversation with the mayor and the treasurer's office and the consulting company, because maybe there's more going on than my office is aware of.
Okay, well, that's fair, and we did try to ask a number of those questions the last time they were in, and we got, I would describe them as very general responses. So I guess it will be an interesting meeting in August.
I can tell you that I'm not particularly pleasant about it myself, so if you want to talk about being fresh.
Okay, because this is just getting extremely frustrating. It feels like we're doing everything we can to give the tools, and it's like the tools are still in the toolbox, and where's the toolbox? It's just very frustrating. I mean, we keep throwing money at it, and it's like we don't get anywhere. And this has been going on for almost 10 years now.
I am also frustrated.
Well, for myself, I will try to work in whatever fashion it takes to try to get this resolved. This is just not sustainable. It's ridiculous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, I had a question if I could.
Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, Tanya, I wanted to also ask you, it sounded like, and I get leery and concerned when I hear this word, but there was and I'm listening to some of the recent correspondence about this fraud report from Markham. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that relates to?
So every year you have to, different governmental positions have to fill out a fraud report. Do you think there's any fraud going on? Are you aware of it? Do you know of any, payments, ethical dilemmas, things like that? So when you fill that out, you have to be completely honest, because they're going to come in and they're going to see what you're doing anyways through your processes, procedures, and your financial records.
Right.
So for me, I need to let them know ahead of time before they come in and see what we're doing before we get written up, because if you already know you're getting written up and you already know that there's a, not saying that there is fraud, but that there could be, and there's a risk of fraud, then you do have to report that.
Right. And so, can you tell us what you recently had concerns about? There was some specifically either expenditures going on without appropriate authorizations. Can you tell us about that issue?
So there's wire payments being made for health insurance and debt payments, and they're large figure, like $13-14 million with no authorization. So for health insurance, if you look in your health insurance account right now, it looks like we've only paid our health insurance through the month of September of 2022. However, I do believe the payments are being made because we still all have health insurance, right?
Right.
And then you have debt payments, and when I go into the system to close out the system, I have to make sure all the debt payments are made, but it doesn't look like the debt payments are made, which made me, have anxiety a little bit. And so I reached out, and I did receive the wire payment information, but it had no authorization on it.
Right.
So that's something that we get written up for quite often, is wire payment.
Who's supposed to make those authorizations?
The mayor's office and the auditor's office should be signing off on all payments made out of the city prior to payments being made.
And in those cases, that didn't happen.
No.
So how is the money, like who's making the payments out? Like somebody's got to be pushing the button to send the money. So who's actually paying it without, because there's supposed to be somebody other than the two of you actually making the payment, but they're supposed to be checking to make sure that the mayor and you have already approved it before they send it.
Right.
So my question is, who's making the payment to send it out, knowing that there's an absence of appropriate authorization?
The keeper of the accounts, the treasurer's office.
The treasurer's
makes those
office.
payments, yes. I've reached out several times to get the documentation. I've met in person. I've requested the information from the mayor. The last thing I want to do is report our own selves.
Right.
But I
But you
mean,
have
that
to.
is my job. So.
Well, it's
have to.
yeah, it's better to we do self-reporting than to be in a situation where Markham says everybody hid under the desk.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, now that the year's closed, I mean, I wouldn't sign those warrants anyways
Right.
because it's too far gone now. So you don't want somebody saying, oh, well, you know, the department heads are okay with that process.
Mr. Chairman?
So when you sign off on that, you're saying like, I'm okay with it, which I would not be okay with that.
Right. So my question is, why is this that difficult that to just, before you make a payment, make sure all the appropriate authorizations are in place? It seems like it would be check, check, and now I'm the third check. And if check 1 isn't there and check 2 isn't there, I don't make the check 3. I don't push the button.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't rocket science.
I mean, I'm in their defense, I'm going to say that the health insurance is somewhat complicated because, you know, you have 4 different plans. Somebody's on the family plan, somebody's on an individual.
But isn't that really immaterial, the complexity of it? Because at that stage of the game, what they're saying, if I'm the treasurer, my job is not to evaluate if the payment is correct.
Yes, you do, though. That is part of it, is that you have to reconcile your employee payments, you have to reconcile your liability from the city. So I'm not going to say like it's rocket science, but I'm going to say you have to go through your list and you have to make sure all those people are still employed. You have to see
But-
how much money, but I mean,
But
it's all
isn't
set
that
up
on
in a
the front
spreadsheet.
end?
It's not
Yeah.
that difficult. It should be done. It may be time consuming. It may be
Right.
tedious and monotonous.
Right.
It may be all those things. But the process is there until it gets better. So it should be being done, and it's been done like that for years. So I don't know.
But my point is, I totally agree with your point that you have to reconcile the numbers, but that to me would be at the front end. Okay, before it's submitted for authorization and approval,
Yeah.
that everybody has signed off on the numbers, then it goes through the approval process, right? We say, okay, it's $10 million. We've gone through, we've looked at all the numbers. I've reviewed it, everybody's reviewed it, either our broker of record or the different people that we have that have said, yup, this is the correct amount. And there should be a schedule, by the way. This should all be, you know, whether this is paid quarterly or monthly, however they're doing it. And there should be a schedule. But my point is, at the point that it's now ready to make payment, I don't understand how the treasurer can make the payment when he knows that the 2 people before his authorization haven't authorized. So my point is, like, they're making the payment without any of the prior authorizations in place. That, I just don't understand how that's allowed to happen. And then it's not like it's, well, this month was an exception. It's, you know, now you're hearing no authorization since September of 2022. I mean, you're a little behind at that point. So that's a hair on fire moment, I would say, to get fixed.
My hair's on fire.
Yeah, yeah.
Counselor
Okay.
Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, 2 things for me. It seems like if we can have a problem property group that meets once a month to make sure those ducks are in a row, why can't we have an auditor, treasurer, collector, mayor meeting once a month to make sure all these ducks are in a row? I mean, our mayor ran on fiscal accountability. So,
We offer our support for this
Yeah.
process every month. We've
Yeah.
sat down with personnel. We've done some training in personnel. We've done training with the treasurer's
Yeah.
office. We've spent a lot of time trying to get this situation rectified.
So, because one of the questions I'll be asking in August is, we've been paying these consultants all this time. The role of a consultant is to get the people who are paid to do the job to do the job. And I saw 0 evidence of any of that in the last meeting that we had. It wasn't even mentioned that they were training up our people to do it. All we were basically told, my my most prominent memory of it was, you should just come in and see how bad it is, which said to me, I guess we paid $300,000 for nothing then. Because to me, they should have been saying, you should be coming in now to see how much better it is than it was now that you spent over $250,000.
We did sit with them as well and went through the process.
I mean, it's not magic. I mean, I'm not saying I ran a city, but I ran a business. And you had an audit, and the audit said this and this is a problem. The golden rule was you fix it because you never want to have the same problem twice in an audit. You look back at our audits, they're like a cookie cutter rerun every audit. And it's like, who's watching the store? But having said that, because I know we're preaching to the choir, talking to you, and our conversation needs to happen in August. But my biggest concern looking at this from an exposure point of view is $167,000 of cash that we got, but we didn't get. So where is it? $167,000. That's a lot of money to be unaccounted for.
You're not going to like this, but they don't consider $167,000 to be significant in a city this size.
So
I'm not saying I don't agree with what
No,
you're
I
saying.
hear what you're
Well,
saying.
certain members of their staff didn't think
I
it
would
was a
take
big
it,
amount because
but-
they walked out the door with smaller amounts than that.
Yeah, that's
Right.
scary too.
You know,
Right.
we've seen
Yeah.
that movie in the past,
And-
right?
and I
remember
do-
one was 51,000 one time.
Yeah, I do hear you on that in terms of it being material, but if you have 167,000 and nothing's been
Right,
done
checks
to
to them.
change whatever is causing that, that can be, $500,000. I mean,
No, and I mean, next year when we finish our financial paperwork, we might see, some not, significant, but you're gonna see that that's just straightening out your cash to where it should be.
Right.
It could be positive, it could be negative.
Yeah.
And I mean, we receive tons and tons of cash every day.
that's
So a transposition, things like that, or a double booking of a
Yeah.
receipt, or so like you could get a check for $167,000 in and book it twice in error,
right
for whatever
right.
means.
Right, so it can be paper.
So,
for sure,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure, and nobody's
it's a
accusing
lot.
anybody of anything, but it just seems to be an area of, bigger potential.
Well, if we
liability.
reconciled more often, I think we would find the errors and be able to resolve them quicker. But when you have years of reconciliation
Right.
that haven't been done, it's too hard to reconcile. And do you want to spend that much time
Exactly.
doing-
Because then it costs $300,000.
maybe?
Got it.
But it does beg the question, if I may, because we've gotten ourselves in trouble, in not this office, but another office that handles money, tax collector, where we got banged because unscrupulous people pick up that you're not reconciling these accounts. And somebody took a walk with a bunch of money. I think it was like 44 grand out of another office. So, it's not a harmless thing that these things don't get reconciled. Actually, people, if they think, you got to be really careful when you're dealing with this kind of money, because people think, well, if nobody's really checking and they won't pick up on it for who knows if ever.
So if I can ask one more follow-up question.
Councilor Reagan.
So is there a way that the council can be helpful relative to the process to getting this once and for all resolved? It seems to me to be in the arena of the mayor more than the city council, but is there something the city council could do from your perspective as the auditor?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to offer support and a little bit of pressure to get these responsibilities completed, that would be wonderful. Because it looks bad for us. It looks bad for us, when we're going to Moody's, when they're looking at our rating, we don't have
Right.
updated financial statements.
Right.
Our years aren't closed. We always have 2 years open at once. People
Yeah.
are trying to reconcile their grants. The cash receipts aren't in.
Yeah.
How are you going to reconcile when you don't even know what you're getting in for money?
Right.
The sewer project is being held back right now. if we were up to date, that would be complete. We would maybe have a more clear view of what our sewer rate needs to
Right.
be. So if you want to offer any support, I would take it in a moment, because it's not working for me. I've tried. I know, like, I always try to, when I'm pointing something out, when I'm asking, I do try to include the chairs of the finance department. I try to include the president of the city council. I include the mayor. I even report myself to our own auditors. So there's
Yeah.
nothing more that I can, I feel like there's nothing more I can do here right now.
So a communication from the city council to
Please,
the
I'd
mayor?
take that.
We are,
Appreciate it.
All right, well,
Thank
I
you,
just-
Thank you.
Tanya. We appreciate what you're doing.
and we appreciate you hanging in there.
Thank
I-
you.
It's
This-
extremely frustrating.
this conversation is very appropriate and connected to the order that's in front of us, which is very specific towards what happened this past year with the free cash, lateness of the free cash certification in the, June, when we're trying to finish a budget and start a budget, we're dealing with free cash transfers. It's not easy on anyone, including the city council. Nothing wrong with the conversation, because it's part of the answer as to why that happened. But I think our next steps, I think this has been complied with.
I think so.
I think
Yep.
our next steps are we need to get a bigger, more roundtable discussion with the mayor, the treasurer, maybe the consultant, and so forth, so we can share the frustrations and hopefully listen to some progress. Councilor Anderson Burgos?
I've just noticed, I didn't see it before, but it looks like the mayor is online. Unless,
It does appear, Mayor Garcia, that you've joined us. I don't know how much you've listened to this conversation, but we welcome you, as always.
Hey, good evening, councilors. Just the last 2 minutes.
That's enough. But welcome, and we thank you. We're just dealing with one order about the lateness of free cash being certified, and we've just had a lengthy, longer than 2-minute discussion. We got into a lot of things, including things that we will be discussing in the near future in terms of how to resolve some of the issues in the Treasurer's Department and how to resolve a lot of issues that pertain towards, a lot of it reconciling the revenue coming in. But
Yeah,
thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, and very much looking forward to it. And these are the things that we really need, everybody. And I know I've preached this before, not only on the campaign trail, but several times in front of this body, that this is the core issue, the deficiencies identified in audit, and which there has been incremental progress. No thanks to me since I've been here, like I said before and reported in the past. Just little strategies we've implemented, coupled with Tanya's aggressive approach to try to catch up and close a lot of those old deficits. But, the city's behind. It's been behind with its postings for a long time. We had the transition in the Treasury 3 times, right? Sandy left, and for a brief period we had the successor, and then she left, and then we have somebody else, and goes in line with everything that I keep talking about sometime in the near future. Hopefully we can change that from elected to appointed and bring it on to CAFO. As far as the internal teams, we do meet monthly. Every financial member, including Tanya, we get together and we go over the progress with each of the deficiencies identified in the audit. We put together where we are, we get updates on where we are in the fiscal year as far as our finances are concerned, and deficits being closed and grants and reimbursements being collected. But like I said and reported before, there's a lot of work to do in that treasurer's office. And I think there's some disagreements with folks on this body, rightfully so. I think we all need to get educated together so that we're all on the same page. And it sounds like to me that conversation is going to be coming very soon, so that we can take the problems in that department a little more seriously. And you've always been taking it seriously. I'm not trying to say that you're not, but we need to step it up a little bit. The current treasurer needs help in there. There are people that think that maybe not. But I think when we have that conversation later, the roundtable you're talking about, bringing in that consultant, getting on the same page is really going to help us elevate the seriousness and the support that that office needs so that Tanya could get the job she needs done. But like this has been the Holyoke story for a very long time. We're trying to put it on a better path. There's little things that, little things that we've been able to do to get some wins, which is great, and we celebrate them. But the larger structural issues that have been snowballed for probably about 10 plus 15 years or so, maybe even longer, it's going to require a little more work than what we anticipate. But very much looking forward for that conversation. I'm happy that, Tanya did bring it to my attention. Her and I did meet with the treasurer, and we're very straightforward on the issue. But again, it's almost like that department is being set up to fail since day one. So we got to really figure out how to better work together to adequately meet the needs in that department for sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Bacon?
Through the chair, I would just like to note that from my experience on the council has been wholeheartedly supportive of consolidating these offices.
Yeah.
And when
Absolutely.
and when the treasurer was appointed, it was fully recognized and understood that that was a temporary appointment of a person who was willing to step up, but of course had no background in terms of being a treasurer. And so it was perceived and planned to be a temporary situation from all parties involved. And so some of us have been anxiously looking forward to move that consolidation so that we can go into a new structure. So I don't think there's anybody that's against doing it. It's just basically we've got to do things in the order so that we can get to where we planned to be. I think that's more the process that we're in than not wanting to do something. We just have to get it done. Thank you.
You're spot on, Counselor. I'm totally with you with that, and I see that. Certainly, like I said, I think the last time we talked about this, Counselor Jordan and yourself did request a future meeting so we can get more into. You're right. The process, everything that you're talking about, we're on a path. It's just in a matter of understanding that path and continuing the course so that we can reach our end goal. You know what I mean? So the more we learn together, the better we can provide the necessary support to to these, from a combination of the treasurer's office as well as the auditor's office, so that we're a multi-million-dollar business here, and we need a stronger internal control system to adequately keep up with how these funds get managed under the eyes of Mass General Law.
Agreed.
And best practices. So you're absolutely right, Counselor, and I think we're on that path. It's just we need more education on the area so we can better understand and make informed decisions on how we get that department the support it needs, while also work on the consolidation. I know you guys are currently talking about changing the position. I think that's still in committee. I think the committee brought it up again a couple weeks ago, but I don't know what happened after that. But it's there. It's in motion. It's just getting there. Meanwhile, the temporary treasurer, the interim treasurer, Mr. Casey, is just doing the best he can with what he has. So, I share your frustration, and can certainly appreciate whatever support you can. I understand we have to have more conversations so we're all educated on the matter, so we can move the needle a little bit here.
Well, and just as a follow-up through the chair, I hope when the consultants come in, they're going to come in with some concrete information about what they have been able to accomplish and what changes they've been able to implement and institute in our office for $300,000.
Is that?
Yep.
Councilor
Thank
Dre?
you.
Yeah, real quickly, Mayor, for the meeting too, because one of the points that seems to keep brought up is, and I know we just added another job in the treasurer's office, another deputy treasurer position. how many people are in the Chicopee Treasurer's office? How many people are in the Westfield Treasurer's office? Can we do a department-to-department comparison for that meeting when they come in? Because I want to see what is going on that Chicopee doesn't have these problems, Westfield doesn't have these problems. And so can we see like a compare, like, okay, they've got the same amount of staff. So then it's not a bodies issue, it's we just don't know what we're doing issue. Or is it, you know, oh, well, this office has 3 more people than we do, and they're doing this, and this. You should, since we're paying $300 grand a year, our consultants should do an analysis of what. Give me the great functioning treasurer's office in X community. You know, is it Chicopee? Is it Westfield? Is it these others? But you don't hear about them spending these kind of monies on consultants that we are. So give me the properly functioning one and do a Chicopee has this many people and this is how they segregate the duty. This is Westfield. And then we can do a cross comparison at our meeting. And then we can say, okay, we need to realign. And then we can have, we're armed with what? Because it's easy to keep saying, oh my God, we don't have what we need. Well, tell me what you need. And it's, because this is not sustainable. Right. I mean, we're not going to have $1 million cleanup of the treasurer's office because most of the time, if you go into your boss and say, I need $1 million to know how to do my job, you know what their first thing the boss says? Well, you're fired, and now we're going to bring in somebody that knows what to do. I mean, that's what normal, you know, that's the normal reaction. So anyways, on that point, look forward to the meeting.
Anyways, on a better note, let's get rid of item number 9 because Charter and Rules has this order coming out.
Complied with.
Mayor, it's not unanimous coming out of Charter and Rules. I know part of the recommendation is the mayor becomes ceremonial and we hire a chief financial officer that reports to the city council. Just kidding. But it's not unanimous because we know we have charter issues that need to be defined when we do this and do it properly. But that's a discussion coming up as early as next week. But on this order, for more specific.
Complied with.
Motion made, second, complied with. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Mayor, we have for the first time before the Finance Committee, Sergeant Joseph Zerhide of the Holyoke Police Department. Sergeant Zerhide, are you with us now?
I am.
Thank you, and we welcome you. We tell everybody on their inaugural run before the Finance Committee, you get 1 free pass. That's tonight. Yeah. After tonight, you're on your own.
I appreciate it.
All right, we got 3 items for you. Hang on 1 second while we get them off the table. Item number 6.
Should we do one at a time, or you want to do
one at a time? Yeah.
Okay, item number 6 off the table.
Motion made, second, to take item 6 off the table. This is the request for accepting a grant under Mass General Laws 44, Section 53, that the fiscal 2024 State 911 Department Emergency Medical Dispatch of $24,500 with no match be accepted, authorize the establishment of a fund and a method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures and all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Off the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sergeant, welcome. We appreciate you being here. I'm sure the chief gave you an idea. What we're just looking for is a walkthrough for the grant. One of the questions we always ask is usually now in the language that there is no match, how the grant is being used, and any issues you might want to bring to our attention.
Yes, I appreciate your time today. Thank you guys for having me here. So this grant, the Emergency Medical Dispatch Grant, is going to be for $24,500. It is a no-match grant. That money will be used with Cataldo Ambulance for their dispatchers specifically, for overtime related and salaries for their dispatchers that are providing 911 calls and medical advice to people on 911. That's the majority of this grant.
Sergeant, I kind of know the answer to my question, but I'm not 100% sure. The dispatchers are employees of the ambulance company, of Cataldo?
Yes, they are. So the way a 911 call comes in now, it comes to the Holyoke Police Department. And when it's medical related, we send it to Cataldo, their dispatchers that are certified in providing first aid over the phone.
So it's the city relaying a request for a service from the ambulance company. Is that a better way to say it, or a better way I can say it?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay, Councilor Jordan has a question.
Yeah, Sergeant, straighten me out here on this. I'm under the impression Cataldo's running an ambulance service for the city, correct? And they have 24/7 coverage of the city, correct?
Yes.
So we obviously operate 24/7. So if a medical call comes in, you say, oh, this is Cataldo, right? And you direct it over to their dispatch team, correct?
Yes.
So why are we giving them $24,500 to pay for their dispatch service? Because that's a service that they're already required to provide.
Right, we're applying for this grant, and it was money that's designated for this purpose of the medical dispatchers, which we don't have within our own city. They're subcontract through Cataldo. So this money out of the EMG portion would go towards funding those positions for the dispatchers that are working specifically for our community.
Sergeant, wouldn't the fire department dispatchers be medical for the city?
I don't have an answer to that. I can get you that answer, but the emergency dispatchers for Cataldo are at the fire department.
I guess what I don't understand, Sergeant, is like, are we just giving them money? Because like this is a service they signed up for this to be, so because they get all the, if they send an ambulance, they're getting paid. We don't get any of that money. That's where they get taken care of. And so my question is, why are we paying for Cataldo's dispatch service? That's their responsibility. They're billing out the ambulance service for that. So why are we paying them $24,500?
I would have to get back to you for a better answer.
Okay.
I do know they, within that grant portion, it only covers the emergency medical dispatchers, and those specifically are used for the city, but you're right, they are contracted under Cataldo.
Okay, so maybe you could get back to us on that then.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
And it's not a bad thing, Sergeant. I think we're just trying to understand it, because it's a new thing to, I believe, all of us.
I don't know if, yeah, because is this a new grant for this, or have we done this in prior years, if you know?
We've done it in at least one or two prior years, the last two.
I guess I'm just wondering, is this
We
some
may have
deal-
just gotten the best explanation from you,
Yeah,
as opposed to prior years.
yeah. Because it sounds like we're just underwriting a cost of theirs that they already have to pay for, and that, like, I'm trying to understand why are we paying for this? Like, that's their deal. This is their employees. They're required to have a 24/7 dispatch any service anyways, right? Yeah.
If I could ask a question, Sergeant, if this comes from the Executive Office of Public Safety, if we didn't have a grant, would we be paying for these dispatchers as a city?
I would have to look at their contract to see that and get back to you on that question.
During the budget hearings, we had some discussion about the contract, because in the budget, there was I forget the exact line item, but it was pretty clear, I believe Chief Pratt and, it might have been the fire department, we talked about Cataldo having work privileges, work area privileges, which does make sense in terms of their dispatchers. But we also were, I believe, told that they give the city in lieu of rent, X amount of dollars to allow the dispatchers to work at the fire department, which makes sense a little bit too, you know, similar to the renting of the station, the old station on South Street. So, I mean, it's a grant coming in, but I guess it's just the questions that need to be answered.
I guess my question is this money that could otherwise, we could be giving it to pay the fire department for providing the, could this be 24/5 going to HPD dispatch or the fire department dispatch? I mean, are we giving it to Cataldo? Like, I want to know why we're giving it to Cataldo versus one of our other city departments, which could be saving the taxpayers money if that's true.
So I do know for our dispatchers personally, it's another line item on here, number 8. When we get to that one, that will be for our dispatchers. But
Okay.
our dispatchers aren't emergency medically qualified to provide that 911 first aid over the phone. That's why it goes over to Cataldo, who do have the personnel to provide that, who are certified in that aspect.
Unless this is money that we just weren't eligible for, and we're doing Cataldo a favor, and we're sort of the middleman. That could be that could be potentially what's going on here.
As long as we're not opening up Pandora's box and saying it's now our responsibility in the future with or without grant money. Attorney Bissonnette is on with us, and as a matter of fact, I think he just anticipated I was about to ask a question with I'm sure the committee will allow this.
You allow the attorney
Mike, welcome.
Oh,
On
Michael.
that motion, all those in favor, any opposed, so moved. Are you familiar with the contract with Cataldo and what we're discussing here?
Frozen. He's frozen, there he is.
Yeah, it reminds me of the 911 program put in statewide for communities with paramedic or ambulance service. This is a reimbursable grant. Some of you may recall about 10 years ago now, the state requires that first responders dispatch must stay on the line with someone calling with a medical emergency until the first responder has arrived. So as a result, that is what this grant is. Hoyoke doesn't have a ambulance service of its own, so it contracts out, cost of the contract is reimbursed. I believe that's how this one works.
Which makes sense. It's a good thing. It just seems to be a double-edged sword here, though, because Cataldo's got a contract with the city to provide the service. And, part of it should be, and granted, this is money coming from a higher level, which is good. But part of it shouldn't part of it or all of it be their responsibility?
Well, no, under state law, it's the responsibility of the municipality itself. So that's why this program was set up to, as part of the unreimbursed cost mandate, where state ordered municipal functions have to be reimbursed by the state. This was determined by the state auditor to be one such function, unfunded mandate by the legislature. So as a result, this program of reimbursement was established to reimburse direct expenditures out of the budget or to reimburse contractual expenditures. So there's somebody on the line from the initial call being received to the time of arrival for a first responder in a medical emergency. That's my understanding of the program.
Thank you. Makes sense.
Okay.
Councilor Jordan.
Mike, if I understand the way it's happening, though, is if there's a medical emergency, the dispatcher immediately transfers the call over to the ambulance service, right? And that's kind of how it's working. So that's happening either way, though. That's just the way it works. So my question is, like, what's different? What's different? That would happen. That's always happened, right? We just kick it over to the ambulance service, and they take over from there.
There's a level of training and certification that's required, and my understanding is that the city doesn't have its ducks in a row for that kind of certification. to handle the dispatch all the way through the termination of medical emergency. So that's sort of on a continuum of service that you want to provide. In this case, there's no ambulance service. So I believe the thinking was have the ambulance service dispatcher stay on the line, that dispatcher being certified, and they would stay with the case all the way through emergency response.
Oh, so what you're saying is we stay on the line, we don't transfer the call, that both are on every call? Is that it?
No.
Maybe the sergeant, can you talk to us like how this really works?
Oh, yeah. I think, thank you, Attorney Bissonnette, for helping out with that explanation. He was right. But I think the council members were on the track in the beginning as well. With this grant, Cataldo cannot apply for it. We as the Holyoke Police Department are a primary PSAP agency. Therefore, we have to apply for it, and it's almost like this is going to be a sub-grant for them. But you are correct, Councilor Jordan. Only one dispatcher is on the phone call with that 911 call. So when it comes into the Holyoke Police Department, if it's medical, they'll then transfer the line to Cataldo. Once Cataldo picks up, we'll hang up the phone. They'll stay on the phone with Cataldo because their personnel are medically trained to provide first aid over the phone, and the dispatchers at HPD are not qualified for that portion. That comes down to the state law where somebody has to be qualified. That's Cataldo. But because we're the primary PSAP agency, we apply for it, and then the funds will go to them for the dispatch purposes.
Okay.
If I could ask a question along that lines to the auditor. Tanya, this is a reimbursable grant from the way I'm reading and understanding it. So if it's reimbursable, what money is spent up front before we can reconcile the grant monies to offset the money that was spent? Is it Cataldo's money or the city budget?
For a grant, it would be the city's money, and then they would file for the reimbursement, and the revenue would come into the city.
Okay. But this is paying for Cataldo dispatchers, why would it be city money?
They would file for reimbursement with the city, and then the city would pay Cataldo, and then we would submit for the reimbursement for the dispatch.
With their invoice.
Yes.
Yes. I think I'm going to give my editorial comment on this. I'm in favor of it but I can see now it's all making clear. In my opinion, what I think is going on, correct me if I'm wrong, is they're basically, the state is giving them a grant.
Right.
We're the middleman.
Yeah.
So they're probably sending us a bill for this service. We then pay this, and then this somehow gets reimbursed in the wash. But it should be said, I think a lot of this is semantics, because we always referred our medical calls to the ambulance company before this ever happened anyways, right? I mean, we would immediately, I don't think that procedurally, I don't think anything has changed. It's just they're calling this, we're providing the medical whatever, and the state's handing out money, and they need us to be the conduit to get them the 24. But this is really between the state subsidizing the ambulance people.
Yeah.
If these people worked for us, we'd probably be able to keep the money, but since they don't, yeah, okay. All right. I'll make a motion to approve it.
Motion made second to
At
approve.
least we
Refer this to
understand
the full
it now.
city council next week. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 7 off the table?
Motion made second, we take item 7 off the table. Introduced under my name for the mayor in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the city council accepts the provisions of the fiscal FFY 19 Project Safe Neighborhoods, otherwise known as PSN, for a $20,069 with no match, and authorize the establishment of fund and method appropriate for the accounting of receipts. Off the table for discussion, all those in favor, any opposed, so moved. Tanya, is this a typo, fiscal year 19, or is this Am I missing something?
No, the documentation actually says fiscal year 19, and sometimes with the state and the federal government, they receive the money first and then they award it out in grants. So it's accurate. The
I thought
contract-
we were behind. Sergeant, would you like to walk us through this one?
Yes, this one should be a lot smoother. So we've had the Holyoke Police Department and the City of Holyoke has a long-standing ties with the Project Safe Neighborhood for multiple years now. We were informed by their project manager that there was some additional funds that could be used up related to purchasing narcotic handheld analyzers, and that's what this $20,069 with no match will be used for. These analyzers are small handheld devices, and an officer can point them at what they suspect to be drugs, and it shoots a little laser beam. Some of them work differently. Some use a laser beam, some use like a sniffer test, but it will tell you exactly what that substance is. And this is really helpful if you're out on the street and you need to make positive identification right away, but it comes into a big play when somebody has an overdose and the medical personnel aren't positive on what substance they ingested. If there's any part of that bag that's left over, an officer can point this machine at it and it will tell them exactly what substances were in that bag or that they consumed.
That's pretty wild.
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm starting to get scared.
Yeah.
I feel like we just went from fiscal 19 to fiscal 35
Yeah.
in terms of technology. How many handheld pointers will this buy?
This should buy 2. We're getting quotes from a couple different companies. We're budgeted for 2 with the $20,069. We're working with a couple different companies to see where they can come in with the best, or what their offers are, their prices. A couple of our officers are already trained and familiar with these devices. Some of the local agencies around us do have them. We do not currently have any in our inventory, and that's what we're hoping to purchase with this. We're hoping to get 2 of them, and especially, it's good for anything when you're on the street, but especially when there's overdoses of an officer or a civilian is ingest something or is exposed to it, medical personnel can know right away what that substance was.
Not to jump ahead, but I'll wear my other half for 2 seconds. Great tool for our police officers, for any police department. Is this something that will stand up in court also?
Yes.
Any further discussion?
Motion approved.
Motion made and seconded that we approve the request to accept and use this grant as stated. If no further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. One more.
Motion to take item number 8 off the table.
Motion made and seconded we take item 8 off the table, introduced under my name for the mayor. Mass General Laws 44, Section 53A, the city accepts the provisions of the fiscal 2024 support and incentive grant, $306,443, no match, and authorized establishment of fund and method appropriate for the accounting of receipts. Off the table, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Sergeant, I know this is an annual grant, but could you walk us through it, not just us, but anybody that might be listening at home?
Yes, you're correct. This is a annual grant. We've received it for multiple years now. The FY 2024 Support and Initiative Grant is going to be $306,443 with no match. And this covers the PSAP grant, which is for our dispatchers. So this year there was a little change to the application. So for our dispatcher portion, we'll receive $246,443. The additional $60,000 this year, the PSAP grant includes a $60,000 for a co-response clinician. So the Holyoke Police Department for multiple years now has employed a behavioral health clinician to go along with a police officer to any kind of mental health calls. And this year, the PSAP grant included, if you do have that program in place, they'll supply $60,000 towards that clinician's salary. so we can keep or hire an additional clinician or keep the one that we currently have. And so that 60,000 will go towards that, and the other 246,000 will go towards anything related to our dispatchers, with including upgrades in equipment in our dispatch room and dispatcher overtime personnel that can be used in that budget.
Any discussion, any questions?
Motion to approve.
Okay. And just, Sergeant, the dispatcher part is same thing. This grant will reimburse the salaries as time goes on. And then there'll be a
Correct.
surplus. We have to have the line item fully funded. There'll be a surplus at some point which can be requested transferred out. Where will the 60,000 go though? What line item?
I will have to get back to you on that question. I can write that down and get back to you.
Sorry, Sergeant, I was kind of looking at the auditor and she's not looking at me.
I apologize.
No, it's not your fault.
What
Do
was
we,
it?
is this a new position or is this a contracted position that the city is working with someone?
I honestly would have to defer to the police department for that because I'm not sure.
Okay.
Do you know?
Sergeant, go ahead.
So we currently do, we've had this program in place for many years. We've never received money from the PSAP grant for it. We've utilized other grants. We were working with BHN, the Behavioral Health Network. We're currently in the transition to working with CHD. CHD has come on board. We have their clinicians now working in the city with a police officer co-responding to these mental health calls. It's great because they can diagnose on scene. They can provide treatment on scene without having to send them to the hospital. They also have additional resources that they can offer them if it's not immediate. I know that if needed, they can see a psychiatrist or a therapist within 48 hours of talking to one of these clinicians. So they do have a lot of follow-up help. But this 60,000 will specifically be for a new clinician. It's not going to supplement the one that we already currently have working under a separate grant.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any questions? Councilor Drain.
No, sir. I made a motion to approve.
Motion is made and seconded that we adopt and approve, recommend this to the full city council next week. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Sergeant, good job. Welcome to
Thanks.
your inaugural run.
Thanks, Sergeant. Thanks, Sergeant.
Thank you.
Good
I
job.
appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good night.
One more motion.
Motion to
Motion
adjourn.
made and seconded to
Second.
adjourn. All those in favor? Let's
Aye.
not discuss it. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good job. Good job, Joe.